right, YouTube, thanks for tuning in. This is our first original episode here with First Detachment. Got Mr. Justin Harris with me, Joe Miller. I'll be kind of guiding us through this discussion. And but before we jump into some hot topics, a little reflection, we're going to talk about some prep, some cramping situations, being watery, all that fun stuff. Talk a little nutrition and optimal performance to get out of your nutrition, your training. But before we get into that, just a reminder to comment in the comment section, as the YouTubers say down below. Go ahead and do the like thing, the subscribe, and notifications. And again, that just kind of encourages us to make more of the content that you would like and love to see more of. And the comments, definitely do not be shy. Share in there what other things you'd like to know, questions. We will be having Q&A sessions. We'll be having a rotation of guests. Many of them are top-level IFBB athletes that'll be on here, and a variety of different sports. We have some UFC fighters and all kinds of exciting people that are going to be joining the show. But this will be our first one. So be sure to subscribe so you can see future episodes. But welcome, sir.
What's up, Joe? How you doing?
What's going on?
Not much. Been several minutes since we talked.
It has been since I screwed up the last recording we had. So, well, I thought we could jump in here. For those who don't know, we'll give you the quick version. About in the early 2000s, I used to compete with Justin amongst a whole gym at 16 Mile and Gratiot in a little city in Clinton Township, Michigan, that had a bunch of future pros in it. But
yeah,
we were kind of getting after it at the state level at the time, and that was pretty fun. I don't know if you want to comment on that before I get into the
yeah. I mean, that was where I cut my teeth. And people don't know, but if anyone's watched Project Super Heavyweight with Steve Kuklo and I, Joe was actually the third training partner in that group. We trained in the mornings, and he had just recently left. He started a job at Lifetime Fitness way back then. And so he missed out on all the Project Super Heavyweight fun. But yeah, that was our crew back then. Morning. It wasn't morning crew. It was like 9 a.m. morning. I was working a weird shift. Steve was a child still, so I don't think he had anything. We all were. But yeah, and then the real world started happening, and everyone had to get jobs and stuff, and it kind of fell apart. But
I think for a bunch of young guys throwing around weight, we were pretty good. We only got yelled at by I forgot that guy's name, but when they got those new mats by the dumbbells, we had like the 150 dumbbells. We got yelled at a couple times for slamming those, but I think outside of that, I think we were pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty well
I mean,
behaved.
well, Mike Bloomquist was the owner, and we were friends. I mean, that was a great gym. I mean, that was just like a phenomenal gym. It wasn't big. It was a small little gym, but we had Steve turned pro, Karen Zaremba turned pro, Brian Pazier's turned pro.
Who's the girl you worked with? She had blonde hair. Bodybuilder. She was a bodybuilder.
From there?
Yeah. She kind of hung out with Karen.
Oh, Alicia St. Germain. Yeah, she almost turned pro too. Jeez, yeah. I'm still friends with her on Facebook and stuff. Tim Henning was 800-pound bencher at 181.
Wow.
Miranda Cohen Fit or something, I think, has a pretty successful online coaching or something business now. She used to train at the gym I train at here in Kalamazoo. I see that she's at that gym now, and there's actually still an Optimum Nutrition ad of me on the wall, which cracks me up because I saw it in the background. But she's I think she's got a really big Instagram following or something. But somehow I think I followed her because she talked to me about coaching 5 years ago or something when she was in the Kalamazoo area, and then I've been following her, and I just realized, okay, I noticed that gym. Yeah, but I mean, what a great little gym! Small little town, 16 Gratiot. Anytime when you were like prepping for anything, there was basically the top 3 of each weight class at the Mr. Michigan was at that gym, and there was probably only 500 members in the whole gym, and 200 of them were competitors.
And everyone was like pretty nice, but everyone also had those eyes. Like, are you going to get off the Stairmaster? Because I'm going to go longer than you.
Because there's only 2. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, exactly. There were only 2. That's true.
And the one was in the corner, like it was on the other side of the farthest vent for the AC, and it was in that back corner. And what was there, like not a Quiznos or like a Boston Market? Right next door. So that wall was like hot from the kitchen next door. So if you were in that corner with no airflow and just heat seeping off the wall, that step mill was brutal.
Oh man, I remember being hunched over that thing many times. A lot of time on
Yes.
that. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
so yeah, competed early 2000s myself. But gosh, a little over 2 years ago, reached out to Justin, sent him some pics, said, "Hey, I think in about a year or so, I'm gonna, give it another run as an old man, kind of give it a shot." And he said, "No." He's like, "You gotta do it now." He's like, "You're competing now." I'm like, "Oh man." So we got started. We did a plan, and I don't remember. Was it Central States? I did
Yeah.
2021 as a heavyweight at Central States. So that was pretty cool. But I thought for the topic today, just to kick things off, we can kind of talk about a little bit about what happened to me, and I didn't follow the plan to a T, which we'll get into. But the overarching thing was essentially I was pretty uh, really dehydrated, or yeah, I was dehydrated and cramping, but on the one hand, but on the other hand, I was kind of looking like, like watery on stage. And so that was like the thing that I was trying to figure out, what that
Hmm.
means and what it goes over. So what I thought I would open up with is just kind of show a couple of pictures as an example really quick. And so let me kind of spin these up really quick. I'll first pull the first couple. Um, for a guy who, has competed in a while, can you see this?
No.
Whoops. Nope. It popped up on the wrong screen. Let me pull it over here. You seeing it now on the screen there?
Hmm.
So, I was just kind of like this for a visual. We can pull the other ones up when I was on stage, but just like, lower back, glutes, hamstrings, whatever. You can kind of see a difference on the stage when I get up there. But this was, a couple days before, right when we were trying to dry out. This is another one really quick. Again, for a guy who didn't do it for 20 years, I think I started
That's the
working
thing.
only
That's
about
the
eight
thing.
weeks. It was only 8 weeks we worked together, so I think we
Yeah.
did pretty good.
Well, the thing that I've learned, I remember when I can't remember if it was Jay or Ron. I think it was Ronnie telling Jay when Jay took he was there in 2011, but he didn't look that good. He took 2012 completely off, and he wanted to come back in 2013. And Ronnie told him, "Don't do it. It doesn't work." Because I guess apparently Ronnie tried to come back in like 2009, maybe. I think he did do well in 2007. Took time off, and I think there was a time when he had like a flat top, and he was going to try to come back. And I learned this myself. Uh, it's so much. It's weird because there's muscle memory, So I took a long time off. I went back to grad school, and when I came back, not using any supplementation or anything, any PDs or anything, I was gaining weight, rapidly, getting stronger, and then I was gaining like several pounds a week for a while when I finally started really getting after it again. And so like the muscle memory was amazing, but getting in shape after being out of shape and taking time off was so much different and so much harder. It's really very, very difficult to do it in one one run. I'm
Right.
sure and Ronnie told Jay that, and I think Jay realized that it's hard. It's like you need that time in the game, and the muscle memory comes back real quick. You had the size
Right.
back, but that look, there's something that's really hard to do, just I've been off, I start training and I want to go right into a show. It's really hard to do.
Yeah, and I think you've said it too. Like the best thing when you're trying to get in shape is just do a show. Like just do it, and the best way to
Yeah,
get better at competing is just compete, right? So it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I know some plans kind of fell through this year, but I'll be doing some old man work this next year. So we'll be talking about that in future episodes. My hope is I got to catch up to Big Paul. So he's quite a few pounds ahead of me, but it'd be
Paul
it'd be really fun.
and Paul could even be an example because he took a lot of time off, came back and added most of his size. But that first show, it was a bear getting him in shape, and it's just the body just doesn't respond. And of course, you can see what Paul's done the last year and a half since then. That came back and completely different physique on stage. I think he went from 180 to 230 or something in 1 year, and he's walking around pretty lean at about almost 280 right now. So it
Right.
comes back quick, but it's that first show when you've had a long time off, is the body just is like it doesn't like it.
Yeah, I would definitely need to do one more show and off season, and then try to stand next to him on the old man stage at nationals. All right, so I want to spin these up really quick. These are just kind of the show. So you saw, everybody saw the first pictures. When you see these, you'll kind of see where I'm going at. So this is, these are kind of just looking at some of the little blurry, but you kind of see like the lower back and and glutes just kind of weren't.
Hamstrings, especially. I mean, your hamstrings were you could see some separation in the other pics. I think
Yeah,
that's the one.
yeah, that's true. So yeah, I wanted to kind of get your take on it because like what was weird for me is like, and I, people at the show, there were, gosh, now I'm drawing a blank. There were a couple pros there, a couple guys who retired, and they're kind of just that saw me a little bit before and were, just commenting on like, I just looked a little watery, but on the other hand, I was cramping. So I was like, oh, that seems,
Yeah,
counterintuitive. But I thought maybe you could talk through that because I'm sure other people have ran into that and made
yeah, and that
some
is the
errors.
counterintuitive thing, and that's the hard thing is because like watery and soft are different. And I'll kind of start it with everyone knows like salt like absorbs or attracts water. I mean that everyone you add salt to the body, you hold water in the body, so you can almost picture like salt absorbing water. Well, when salt's in your bloodstream, water's going to go in your bloodstream. Okay, and so that's the tricky thing is you want to be relatively low in fluid volume, especially under the skin, but you still want as much water in the body as possible. And so like watery and soft are different. Watery would be like you aren't dry enough, you haven't dried out, and soft doesn't necessarily mean that at all, because soft combines how full your muscles are and where the water in your body is. And so the most important thing is that your blood has to stay at 0.9% sodium. Like if you get lactated ring, if you get saline solution at the hospital, you get an IV, see it says 0.9% saline, meaning 0.9% sodium. That's the sodium concentration of your blood. And so if that gets lowered, what's like if that gets to 0.8, what do you have to do? Your body has to increase the concentration by flushing out water. Okay, so that's why removing sodium dries you out. That's why you get dehydrated. You remove sodium, blood sodium drops, and so to keep that level, that sodium content level, if you have 10 chunks of sodium in your blood and now you only have 8 chunks, you have to reduce 2 chunks of water to make it even again. And so when you do that, then you'll pee out the water, and that's why lowering sodium makes you pee out. The problem is that you can go hyponatremic, which is low blood sodium. And if you get hyponatremic for a period of time, you go into something called redistributive hyponatremia. And you can imagine this: if your blood sodium dips way too low, 0.7% or something, you don't have time to pee that out. It's dangerous for the body to have the wrong sodium content. Everything's got to be in homeostasis. So your body does is redistributes that water under the skin. And that's a real common thing in blood sugar issues, because one of the things that happens with low blood sodium is to store glycogen, you need obviously glucose, but you need water and you need sodium. So glycogen is like 4.5 times as much water as it is glucose, and sodium is kind of the carrier that brings it to the muscle as glycogen. So if your blood sodium gets too low there, your blood sugar also rises. And that's another thing that causes that redistribution. And like you can see, diet, like one of the side effects is high blood sugar will be like water retention, things like that. And so that's the hard thing to understand is people always think it's just one direction. Like I'm going to dry out for the show, boom, just dry out.
Right.
But there's more going on. It's not just So you have to kind of think of what you're doing. And so if you're what often happens when you get that soft look on stage is you're trying to dry out too hard. So you like in the opposite, in reverse, if you lower water, you have to flush out the sodium also. So it's the same thing. So we don't really cut sodium. I don't with my diets, because that whole thing cascades way too quickly. We taper water. And so if you taper water too hard and your blood volume gets too low, then your blood sodium concentration increases and your body has to flush out that sodium. And so if that happens really quickly, like if you dry out more than you should, or you're really pushing the dehydration and your sodium level's still high, you're going to pee out that sodium like crazy, and you're going to like almost flash reverse it into hyponatremia again. And so really the weirdest thing is when you look like that, typically, and and you had the cramping, and so obviously like there's an electrolyte imbalance. Electrolytes are just like charged ions, or charged salts basically. And we've talked about this. Well, I won't explain the salt again, but so like what conducts muscular contractions are the electrical circuits. And actually the name troponin nutrition comes from the fact that when calcium and electrolyte enters the muscle cell, it binds to troponin, moves troponin off of tropomyosin, which allows the myosin and actin cross bridge heads to interact and cause a muscular contraction. So, you know, obviously electrolytes are important for muscular contraction. Well, when you uh, deplete water too much, and that whole thing happens, what happens is you have no like gradient to bring fluid back into the bloodstream. It's all, the gradient is out. It's all going under the skin into the, you know, the extracellular space. That's the redistribution. And so you like, a lot of things go wrong. The things you'd think first to fix it won't fix it. Your first thought is, you know, cut water, or worse, use a diuretic. Or diuretics work by flushing sodium. So boom, you lower your sodium even more, and you just get more, you get softer, you know. And then at that point, your body's trying to get water out of the body any way it can. So you're losing glycogen, you're flattening out. And when the muscles are flat, you're going to look softer also.
Yeah.
And you know, and the next thing is like, so then you look flat. So what do people think? Well, I need to add carbs, you know, so they try to carb up more, but you can't carb up because there's no sodium and water to form the glycogen. So your blood sugar starts spiking, which just exacerbates the redistribution. So oddly enough, the quickest fix when that's happening is to just load sodium, like eat a salt packet. Spike the blood concentration of your sodium. So if you spike that really quickly, your body, and you're not drinking anything, you spike the sodium level really quickly, your body has to find a way to dilute it back down to 0.9%. So it's going to find water anywhere it can. Where is it going to find that water? From that extracellular space under the skin, suck it back into the muscles, and then your veins will stick out. And even more oddly, which is why whenever you see that like glazed donut look where guys like are smooth, it almost looks like fuzzy a little bit. What that really is just low blood sodium, meaning they have low blood volume. And so all the microvascular, all the blood vessels near the skin are flattened out because there's not enough blood volume. And so that makes the skin look perfectly smooth. If you add sodium, what's going to happen in the grainy look, that's really what the grainy look is for the most part. When you add sodium, you spike sodium, you don't add carbs, you don't add water, your blood sodium increases. Your body has to dilute that blood back down by getting water in there any way it can. The only way it can, because you're not drinking water, is from under the skin. It sucks it back into the blood vessels. All those micro blood vessels stick out, make the skin dimpled and grainy. And that graininess is actually water, which is the really effed up thing. Because, you know, obviously you have to be lean enough and dry enough for that to work. But that graininess comes from being so lean and then actually having like high blood volume in your blood vessels. So those micro blood vessels, the ones really near the surface, are filled with blood, and it creates that like gritty, grainy look, you know?
No, it makes a lot of sense, because I think like what we talked about, you know, after was you had it like to a T as far as like measuring how much water I had at each meal. And, you know, some of them, I think it has got in my head a little bit. I'm usually pretty level headed and following a plan to a T, but there were a couple servings where I didn't have as much as you had planned. And then, as I was saying before we started recording, you know, you had in the protocol, I think it was like 4 ounces of vodka or 4 ounces of red wine. And I may have turned that into 8 ounces of vodka and 8 ounces of red wine because I just couldn't sleep. And I was like, so I don't think that helped at all, because I just could feel things getting worse and worse. And it was very difficult. I try to, I think, you know, anyways, that makes complete sense of what happened. But I do want to talk about the night show in a minute. But before I do, you know, you've given tips on how to pump up, and one of them I did use there. But the other thing I've kind of learned through talking to you after that was like what muscle groups to pump up, because there's only like so much blood that goes so much area. So I want you to talk about that in a minute. But the one thing I remember was like, especially the morning show, I could not get a pump for the life of me. And like and I know it's not all about that, right? Because sometimes you'll have a guy who's like deconditioned and just thinks, oh, I could have looked better if this happened. Like, that's not what I'm saying, right? But I definitely could tell, and I'll talk a little bit about the night after we talk about the pump up. But at the night, I got a much better pump, and I'll kind of talk about in between that in a minute. But can you talk a little bit about the strategy for, like, you know, pump up before someone goes on stage?
And so, I think it's kind of evident, but the reason you didn't have the pump in the morning is because all that blood wasn't in or that water wasn't in the blood, you know. So it has the pump is water in the muscle, basically. So the areas that of that muscle have a higher, like the capillaries, blood vessels, those things are just loaded with a little extra water. If all that water is from the skin and there's nothing to take it there, because the sodium also needs to go with it. But then as far as pumping up, there's only so much blood in the body, you know, and then that's what a pump is. And so, especially when you're dehydrated, you know, when you're like a week post show and you're up 25 pounds, you can get a pump everywhere. But when you're dehydrated for a show, there's just not enough blood to get a pump. So you need to be really strategic. And so you want to really think, what muscles look better full and round, and what muscle groups need to show separation. And so now your legs have to show separation, so much so that like half of bodybuilding now is just hamstring and glutes. Do you have lines there, you know? And so if those are full, you lose that separation. You know, you can picture like a Dennis James or any pro bodybuilder when they're in contest shape and their chest is pumped and it's huge, but it's not really defined, you know? And so your back's another one, you know, the infraspinatus, supraspinatus, teres major, teres minor, the rhomboids, all those little muscles, you need to see separation between all of them. When they're full and engorged, that like blurs into that separation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so do you really want to focus on, for most people, I think, never legs.
Right.
I think triceps pump up really well because they add fullness in a lot of poses, the side chest, the side tricep. When you're doing like a front relaxed, the outer head of your tricep is actually kind of the widest thing on your body, you know?
Right.
So that kind of adds to the width. And I don't really like to do biceps. And the reason is it depends on the type of bicep you have. If you have a full long bicep, when you get a really big bicep pump, they kind of just look like a big flat long blob. Now, if you have a really good peak, a pump is great, but that's probably like 10% of the population. I mean, there's not a lot of Arnold Schwarzeneggers walking around that had that.
Right.
So a lot of people don't look worse with a bicep pump. So, and then shoulders, you know, shoulders, you want those nice and round because it's not like there's deep lines in the shoulders. I mean, natural competitors do, but tested competitor or untested competitors just aren't going to have that. So I like to basically stick to chest. Same thing. You're not, you know, like super deep lines aren't as important as chest as much as you want that fullness, a special upper chest fullness, because that really creates like a whole look of fullness for the whole upper body. Triceps, delts, that's about it. So like 3 muscle groups. And if like if your chest is a real stand-up body part and you have really weak lats, I'll recommend pumping up lats, but you have to be careful that you're really trying to focus on the lat, because the same thing, and a good example of that is Nasser Sonbaty. Because you look at him like look at the 1997 Mr. Olympia, and maybe when we publish this we can bring it up. His front double bicep is absolutely astounding. It's unbelievable, the 1997 Olympia. The thing is though, you'll notice like about 5 or 6 bee stings on each lat, which is from, you know, Nolotol or whatever they were using back then, Esicline, you know. And so his lats were incredibly full, which looked absolutely astounding from the front. And he looked like he beat Dorian Yates. But then when you turn to the back, all that fullness is in the back is where what I was talking about. He lost all that separation. And so his back looks soft. It doesn't look, it doesn't look separated. And it doesn't even look that much like bigger, because, you know, when you lose that separation, that kind of hides the fullness. And so you have to be careful with that. You find the picture now?
Yeah. I got one. I'm not sure if this one will work, but I can always bounce off of it if it's not. I mean, this is him right here on the left.
Yeah, so you can see from the back, yeah. And if you do 97 Nasser front bicep, so you'll see, yeah, I mean, he doesn't really gain much, but you can see even in his lats, the separation and stuff isn't as good as Dorian.
Right.
And if you see from the front bicep, yeah.
Let's see what we got here. Would it be this
That's
one?
That's 95 or 96. It's there you go, right there. That'll work.
This one?
Yeah, sure. Actually, if you go back out, that might be shopped a little bit, and the one right next to it, yeah. If you can really see his lats, you can't. But you'll notice there's a little bit, like the right one is clearly larger, and there's a little bee sting there kind of in the middle, and a couple spots. His right lat, the other lat, away from your cursor.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of bumps, a little extra fullness that, like his intercostals are kind of gone there. Well, like back then you could get Nolotil and Esicline and stuff. And so that fullness looks amazing from the front. And he's actually gone on, before he died, he went on record and discussed how he did that with the Nolotil or whatever. So I'm not saying anything new. But with that fullness, you lose that separation in the back. So it's, like everything's like more involved than you think. You think this is a dumb meathead sport, and it's not like it's not rocket surgery, but there are a lot of things involved. Nothing's as just singular as it seems. Trying out for contest isn't just seeing how dehydrated you get, because you can, you do an MMA fight or you make weight for a powerlifting meet, you can lose 30 pounds of water in 24 hours.
Right.
That's super dry. You're not winning a bodybuilding show. You just look small and dry. So. And that's the hardest thing in prep, is because your mind starts going crazy and you start thinking, you start losing the fact that I'm prepping for a contest, because it's so difficult and it's so severe and so extreme. Your brain starts thinking that the extreme is what the prep is. It's just how extreme can I go? Not thinking like I'm landing a ship, you know, I'm landing something on a boat here that I need to be precise with it. I mean, it's difficult to land, but it's not just how hard can I land, you know?
Right.
And that's the hard, I mean, because your brain, because it is so hard, you're suffering, you're starving, you're not sleeping, you're exhausted. And so it's easy to conflate the prep with that. What the prep is just how hard can you work or how much can you suffer? And it's hard to shake that. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say the water and sodium you're talking about makes complete sense, because it definitely isn't well, I'm sure it doesn't hurt the calories in the food to give me a little energy, but you know, I just had a massive pile of like you know, baked fries that were just like doused in sodium and you know, whatever, and I think I had like a diet pop and then a little bit of water on top of that, and it definitely, like, all of a sudden, you know, just you go to the bathroom and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
like this is how
All that
off I
water,
was.
yeah, all that water goes right in your bloodstream and your veins are all popping out
Yep.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yep. And sometimes it's why, like, the guy after, like you said, the guy after the show, you know, was just like, oh, I screwed it up because I look great. But then also, as most of them just don't look at those areas that are no longer dry
Yeah.
or tight, because it's like they're looking at their bicep or something, or their
Yeah,
arms. And
that's
it's
the
like,
other hard thing, because there's a different look that wins contests versus what looks good on photo shoots.
right,
And what looks good in the gym or photo shoots is still being lean, being in contest shape, but just being absolutely full, like you're going to explode, because you're wearing shorts, so you can't see that
right,
your glutes are soggy, your hamstrings aren't separated. But yeah, that's the hardest thing, because that's the hardest thing as a coach, because you'll peak a guy and you'll nail it, even when you nail it, you know. And for a first show, it's hard to nail it, the guy, but he is dry and full, and they, because people they think they're going to turn into Ronnie Coleman or Phil Heath or Big Ramy in peak week. You know, they think like, once I get some carbs in me, I'm suddenly going to be 300 pounds. And so they always have like terrible expectations. But you can have a guy win a show and he'll go and pig out, and then he'll send you pics in the gym the next day. Coach, we should have went on like this.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, you look great with overhead lighting. You know, at the show, you got 70 rows of lights blurring any shadow. They're washing you out. It's like, yeah, you know, I can see that cankles on your through your pants. You know, I
right.
know this wouldn't look good on stage, but that's the hardest thing as a coach.
Yeah, no, I totally had that feel. It was kind of, you know, just the difference between the two. And I also think, for me personally, or I'm sure for a lot of competitors out there, just have a better sleep strategy, because
Yeah,
I definitely failed on that, because, you know, you're not going to get great sleep, like, call it what it is. But I think I got, you know, maybe 2.5, 3 hours. So I was definitely wired, and probably way too much caffeine just to like get through the
yeah,
day. That
and
also
even
didn't
worse,
help.
that like cortisol, you know, that's flushing sodium. I mean, you're just burning through, you know. So it's just, and you can't control it. And that's one of the weird things, is like it's almost like what created the stereotype of the dumb meathead is the fact that the only people who can really go to the highest level in the sport are the type of people who are so laid back and they can't be bothered to stress themselves into a poor look, you know, like the
Right.
guys that you got to pull them away from video games to get them on stage. And it's funny, because the worst thing you can do is know a lot in the sport, really. You know, you want to work, you want someone else to know a lot and tell you what you need to know. But the more you know, the more you overanalyze, the more you like, you think about things you don't need to think about. And then worse, the more you stress, which is the one thing that will always make you look worse.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly the case why I reached out to you, because you know, I was, as I think, I don't know if we said in this episode, but as I said in other recordings, you know, early 2000s, I coached a fair amount of clients, you know, under Triponi Nutrition. So I you know how to progress someone, and have done that. But I'm like, there's not a chance I could do that to myself, because I just know too much. And I would just always think like, oh, I need to do an extra of this or an extra of that, or
Yeah.
cut this. And I mean, there were days where you had more food than I expected. And there was other times where you changed stuff up that I wasn't expecting. There was times where I was like, I think I'm probably gonna be doing 2 hours of cardio this week. And it wasn't, you know, it was different.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know, so that's why you really need somebody who knows what they're doing to kind of reel you in, especially if you're, you know, extremely driven and not afraid of hard work.
Yeah, it's just the sport has got to the point, and, you know, you'll like some of the old guys like Sean Ray will, you know, like kind of make fun of the fact that people need coaches now, and I love, you know, that era was my era. That's what I, you know, like grew to love the sport in, but and the physiques really did look good. But as far as like body fat and conditioning, they really weren't. Dorian Yates was the only one that was coming in modern conditioning. You know, half the, you know, half the top 6 of the Olympia wouldn't have a single line in their glutes. Some of them would have minimal lines in their hamstrings. It just wasn't quite. And then on top of that, with the growth hormone use since then, guys' skin, and I mean, this is a theory, but guys' skins are so much thicker that I feel personally like how lean I used to have to get a person in shape to win, like when, a USA's or nationals in 2004 is quite a bit different. It was not nearly as lean as today getting people in shape. And the only thing I can think of is that you have to just get such extreme low body fat because everyone's skin is so thick from the, GH use. Because back then, even if, even 2 IUs was costing you more than 100 IUs a day does right now. It's so cheap now compared to then.
Yeah. One, is there anything, can you talk a little bit about, I know you, Big Paul posted this on anabolic bodybuilding, the protocol you put together, the suggestions in the goodie bag for, like, I know there's a anti-cramp product that you formulated. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, but also like the other kind of things to have in the goodie bag for cramping or water.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the like the most important thing is just to know that it's sodium and water. That's really all it is. And so almost always, if you're cramping, the first thing you can do to fix it is reintroduce sodium, and that's very nearly always going to cause to fix the issue. And even more often than water, and a lot of times the cramping, the worst thing you can do is add water because that just depletes you of more sodium. But some non-sodium things that really help would be magnesium. Taking like 400 milligrams of magnesium the last few nights before the show. Magnesium, for whatever reason, really seems to, it's a not proper physiological term, but like lock in the sodium you have. It seems like you're able to get much more depleted in sodium without cramping when your magnesium levels are sharply elevated. I don't recommend potassium. If you notice if you buy potassium tablets, the highest dose they give you is like 99 milligrams, where even a medium potato has 720 milligrams.
Right.
And the reason for that is hyperkalemia or high blood potassium levels is extremely dangerous, like deadly dangerous. One of the easiest ways to knock yourself into ventricular tachycardia, which will then can downgrade to VFib and that, cardiac arrest. That's what they do the clear for, which is another side topic. It's not because your heart stopped when they do that. Everyone thinks that. The reason they're doing it is because your heart's beating so fast. It's fibrillating. It's just it's basically shivering. And what they actually do with that is send a super strong electrical signal to stop your heart. And then they hopes that when it starts back up, it starts in a proper sinus rhythm, which is a proper electrical conduction through the heart. I just thought that was interesting. But like hyperkalemia is a very big risk for that. Another thing that you can do is quinine sulfate, and that's actually found in tonic water. So a lot of people drink diet tonic water, and it's actually interesting if you want to read the studies on it, go online, because there's even like funny debate in the medical community, almost like Facebook, like bitching at each other, because quinine used to be a medication for restless leg syndrome at night, which is probably like a histaminic reaction. If you've ever like taken Benadryl, maybe taken 2 or something, and you almost feel like you're on the verge of twitching, or like you have that antihistaminic reaction is that. And so there's weird ways to treat restless leg syndrome, but it is still like an involuntary contraction, which is similar to a cramp. They're both, something is causing a contraction of a muscle outside of the norm. And so quinine really does seem to help cramping also, even though it should be a different mechanism. And like I said, if you go online and read the research articles, they're really funny. But I mean, that's about it. And then always sodium is almost always the fix.
Yeah, I remember you talking about like just like quick, easy ways, like like you said, salt packs or
drink pickle juice,
chips. Yeah.
Or
not chips, but you had like those what are they called? Like Tostitos or whatever, or something like that.
Corn chips.
Corn chips, what I meant to say. Yeah, with a bunch of salt on them.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, I know we're pretty much coming up on time. But this is our first episode, so much more content coming on. We'll have many first detachment athletes we mentioned, other athletes that Justin's worked with or known in the network. So definitely be sure to like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you'd like to hear about, what you'd like us to cover more. As you can see, there's first detachment, there's a lot of information. There's a whole bunch of information on the Team Troponin channel, as well as the Team Troponin website as well. That goes much, much more in depth. And love to have you. Thanks so much for listening in. Anything else you'd like to wrap up with, Justin?
No, that's it. Hope you guys liked it, and post what you didn't like and what you did like in the comments so we can get better.
All right. Good deal. Thanks. We'll see you.